In 1972, one film defined a lifestyle, a generation and its music, Morning of the Earth. Now, to celebrate the original film and music being performed live in concert, let's hear from filmmaker Albie Thousand in an excerpt from a new documentary by Phil Baker.
I was always interested in photography when I was young. I mean, I never had any formal training, but it was just something that I understood. I could always look at something and know, you know, what was the best angle. And then I met Bob Evans. He was a surfer and a filmmaker. Bob was really the first Australian surf film maker. You know, he made 13 feature-length films in his life. He toured all the films around Australia, roadshow them, did all the bookings, got people on the door, did all the marketing, and he showed us the first surfing film that I'd seen. And it was a fantastic film. It showed big waves on Sunset in Waimea. And that was it for me. You know, after that night, I mean, I was gone. That laid the foundations for me to become a filmmaker. I'd met Bob, and over the next 2 or 3 years, I kept in touch with him. And very soon after that, he started Surfing World magazine. And as I developed my skills as a photographer and started taking pictures, still pictures of my friends, I'd occasionally sending some down. You know, then I had a photograph published, and a year or so later, I was in Sydney working in a photographic shop at a department store, and I was a salesperson behind the counter in this camera store. And Bob came in one day, and he said to me, I'm going up the coast next week filming, and we're taking up, you know, 2 or 3 surfers, you know, midgets coming. Would you like to come? I looked around and at everyone in this department store, and they were all like shop store dummies. It took me about 2 seconds to realise that I was going to make a major career change. With boats and people, and head on up the coast. Don't stop until we find a wave. We all feel fine when we see those lines peeling up the point. I worked for Bob for a few more years, and then one time he couldn't go to Hawaii and asked me to go in his place. He came to me and said, here's a tripod, here's 5,000 feet of film, let's say you load the camera, here's a ticket, and in 36 hours I was on a plane with David Trelaw to Hawaii. Soon after I got back from Hawaii, I was approached by David Elphick and John Witzig to start a surfing newspaper. John Witzig had been working on a magazine called Surf, and David had been working for a music newspaper called Go Set. So they said, come along and we'll start a newspaper. And I thought about it and I went, well, at the same time I was interested in making my own film. But I'd been working for Bob for a while, and I'd seen how he promoted his films through Surfing World. So I left Bob and we started Tracks. So once Tracks was up and running, I thought about making my own surfing movie. And I remembered something that happened when I was working for Bob Evans. I got connected to this group in Sydney called E.J. Dwyer, who were a publishing company for the Catholic Church. And I was employed by them to design this series of textbooks for school on social and moral issues. Anyhow, I met these 2 nuns in the process of doing this design work. Really lovely ladies. And one of them said to me, what do you want to do with your life? You know, which was really, you know, left of field question. And totally unexpected. I said, I really want to make a surfing film, a really beautiful surfing film about the ocean. And she said, well, just go out and do it. And I did.
After the break, we catch up with legendary surfers Nat Young, Bob McTavish and Rusty Miller, and find out what Morning of the Earth means to them.
people say to me, when were you surfing at your very best? I say Morning of the Earth. You combine the talent of the then editor of Go Set magazine, who was David Elphick, with the incredible eye of Albie Falzon, and you got a winning combination.
It's painted the dream life of living on the north coast of New South Wales. I mean, I lived at Noosa for the first few years of the 60s, and then later, from 68 onwards, lived here. And Gowrie, Broken Head, Lennox, the past, that was our playground, still is. And that movie captured that, and it's the dream.
Give it a go.
It captured the time. It was at the right time, the right place. And Albie really captured the feeling of the time. It's pretty hard to put it in words, and I think that's why it's still going, because it's just sort of in the film, it's not in the words.
It's like it was truly just made up as we went from day to day. You know, we had no money, very little equipment, but a desire to make a film, a beautiful film about surfing.
Come on, Simon, mister, what's your name? Don't tell me about freedom, that's my game. If you don't fall into line and don't make fame, but it sure feels good. Oh, just the same, baby, it sure feels good.
We stayed in Bali a month and came back to Australia, to a house at Wild Beach where we were editing the newspaper tracks. So downstairs was the tracks office, upstairs was where we lived, and then we had this garage up the back, which had a room underneath it as well, and that's where I edited Morning of the Earth. Well, with the editing of Morning of the Earth, I wanted to cut it, and I'd never edited before. You know, I was really interested in overlays. I wanted to change all the colours. I wanted to have really, you know, long dissolves. You know, I wanted to do special effects, and hello, you know, you want to special effects, so you'd go, okay, I want this, you know, dissolved here, and you'd take those two pieces of film into the laboratory in town. You say, now I want to have a, you know, there's the film, I want to dissolve. So you give it to them, and 24 hours later you go back and they show you the dissolve. So, you know, it was a little frustrating, I tell you. But, you know, somehow when you look at it and you look at the effects that are in there and the colour changes, you go, how the hell did all that happen? Because it'd take you weeks just to do things that you can do in a split second now. I had to cut the film without music because we were creating an original soundtrack. So what I did is I cut long sequences, didn't fine-tune anything. And then we'd give those sequences to different bands. And then they would go away and use those sequences then to compose the music. David Elphick was really responsible.